I just want to start off by saying thank you to Superior Ag. This is, I've done a lot of these events over my career. This is one of the best ones because you get the opportunity as a grower to talk to so many people that are experts in so many things, about things there's no way that you can understand everything that's going on. And it's just it's a privilege to be a part of a day like this. A little background on myself. I do work for WinField United. I lead the seed marketing group. But more importantly than that, I farm as well. And today I want to talk to you with my farm hat on and talk about some of the ways we've challenged our own farming operation. And that's why I say I don't want to preach, because a lot of things we've tried haven't worked, but more things we've tried have worked than things that we didn't. And the more that we have technology and data and digital to drive confidence in decisions, the higher percentage we can change and have it work. So I really, really want to hit on that today. Second thing is I want to say thank you to all of you. That video is really good because it says a mouthful right at the end. You know, in my opinion, farming is probably one of the most noble career paths you can have. Because, yeah, it's a job, but it's more of a way of life, and it's about producing food, feed, fiber, fuel for a global population. And never before has such a small group of people had that kind of impact. So thank you for everything that you do, and thanks for the support of Superior Ag and WinField United. So as we begin today, I want to talk about looking back before we look forward at how can we challenge ourselves to change a bit. When you think about 2020, this was a survey that went out, and they really were looking at three things. What things were the biggest challenges to your operation? If you could have done something different in 2020, what would it have been? And then how optimistic are you about growing your farming operation in the next 5 years? So if we start over on the left, you can see it's the age-old story. I mean, every year there's going to be challenges. Typically, they're going to be different than the year before. And typically, they're going to be a mix between operational and environmental issues, as well as agronomic issues. And you see that right here. Early frost damage, hail damage. I mean, we can't control the environment, right? But what we can do is we can get as much control over it with products like crop insurance, those types of things. You can always say, well, I can avoid early frost damage by planting later, but then what if you slide into a window of pollination that's really hot? I mean, there's no way you can roll the dice and know what's going to come up with that type of decision. So those are things that are really more uncontrollable. When you look at the agronomic issues from a year ago, lodging, so stock lodging in corn, and resistance, both from insects as well as weeds. And when you're out here today, there's some excellent information about weed resistance. I learned a lot. It was excellent. But there's things that we can do about those. And we'll talk about what you wish you had done in 2020 and kind of connect the dots to that, because in 2020, it's a mix of operational excellence and agronomic excellence, right? I wish we'd have put in tile. I wish we'd have built more grain infrastructure. From a agronomic standpoint, I wish we'd have planted earlier. I wish we'd have done a fungicide application, and we'll talk a lot about that. I wish we'd have planted cover crops. And this cover crop thing is really interesting. I spend quite a bit of time on it. And we're at the tip of the iceberg right now. Honestly, when you hear people talk about cover crops in the industry, there's a whole lot of marketing going on and not a whole lot of substance, in my opinion. I feel like what we're working on has a lot of substance, but what I'm really excited about is what is yet to come. Because I don't think it'll only be about carbon. I think it'll be about nitrous oxide abatement, things like that. And we may truly have the opportunity to develop a new double crop. Growing corn and having a revenue stream from carbon at the same time. I believe that we'll see that within the next 5 to 10 years. So all really interesting things. Drought resistant or whatever resistance that the seed brings. And then weed resistance is a huge thing, right? It's what pre and what post. And the really important thing is it's not a singular discussion. You have to talk about both of those at the same time. Todd asked a great question out in the field today about, hey, why would somebody back off on their pre to save $3 to then have a high probability of having to go back in and load up heavier on the post and spend $13? So we can't save ourselves to prosperity. So it's all those decisions that we make along the way. From an optimism standpoint, look at that. 79% of growers say they're going to either stay the same or they're going to grow their operations. And only 21% are saying it's going to get a little bit smaller. So I think the commodity price, technology, all those things are driving more optimism than we've had in agriculture in quite some time. Okay, I had a lot of problems with this morning. I'm sitting up here talking about technology, and I can't even run one of these, okay? But we'll get better. John Romines was going to give this presentation. This is one of his slides, and he's very passionate about it. He apologizes. He could not make it. He had an emergency. But it says we must all suffer one of two things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And what he was talking about was we just came through one of the most challenging times with COVID-19, and we're still being challenged by COVID-19. And think about it. A year ago, Todd just said it, we weren't even enabled to come here and do business in the normal way. Yet, we got the business done because we drove discipline into what we were doing, and we benefited from it. I think about this, and it takes me back to when I graduated. I am actually an agronomist from the University of Illinois. I'm not a very good agronomist, okay? I use a really good agronomist, but when I came home, I started helping my dad farm, and I started a seed company, but I was really trying to change things on the farm. And my dad said to me, you know what? Why do we want to change? We're being pretty darn successful doing it just the way we've always done it. And as I reflect back on that, it's the way we've always done it. That's the 7 most expensive words in any business, and I think it's even more profound in farming, particularly now. That was back in the late 80s. Today, there is so much information to drive change and drive more profitability on your farm that we have to embrace that, and we'll hit on that. So there's just several things that I think that you should challenge yourself with on how you can make changes on the farm and be not only more profitable, but more successful with it. For us, we have a saying, we're going to get bigger by getting better on every acre, and we strive for continuous improvement every year. Now, it's not changing the whole operation. It's changing 1 to 2 things every year, but the first thing that we started to really get intentional about was getting a farm plan built really early, making sure it was robust, and then not straying from it, before the season started. Okay, and that's why this slide says, pick your song, sing it well, and sing it often. Get your plan, make sure it's robust, it encompasses everything, and then make sure that everybody's on board, all your suppliers, everyone. But at the same time, you've got to maintain in-season flexibility. This is another quote, not quite as nice. This is our friend Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And every single year, as a farmer, you get punched in the face. Something's going to happen. There's challenges every year. It can be environmental, too much rain, too hot, too dry, too cold, not enough rain. It's all those types of things. So we have to maintain flexibility so we can change the plan in season to either take advantage of an opportunity or meet a challenge in a way where we may have to move some resources from one input to another input. This is incredibly important, being flexible. Okay, the second thing is really sticking to the fundamentals that have the biggest impact on your operation. When you look in at farm magazines or online, there are so many products, and some of them are good and some of them aren't very good, but are they really the fundamental things that are going to drive your performance? For instance, if you don't have your N, P, and K right, it doesn't really matter what you do after that. You've got to get your fertility right before anything else is going to add to your success. It's Liebig's law of the minimum. So these fundamental 5 are really the 5 things that drive the biggest impact on your farm. And these are every one of them can add over 10 bushel. It all begins with the seed. Everything begins with the seed. We have got to get the best local agronomic recommendation around the genetics as well as the trait platform that's going to work on your farm. Not on somebody else's, on your farm. But that's just where it begins. Because that seed that you're looking at every year has over 700 bushel of potential in it. Easily over 700 bushel. It's what we do after we select the seed, after we plant the seed, that's going to harness the majority of the most potential. That's what it's all about. That's the race to get the most potential. And that comes down to optimization of plant nutrition. It comes down to mitigating early plant stress. I can't emphasize that enough. That is huge. Plant health. Plant health. If you don't have plant health, you'll never fill the grain as much as it should have filled. And then finally, we look at the first slide. The biggest issue was weed resistance, right? We've got to figure out what chemicals we're going to use, when we're going to use them, what adjuvants that we need to throw in. And once again, let's not save ourselves to prosperity, because a weedy field not only brings problems the next year, but it cuts yield as well. The next thing is really about big data and digital. And it's interesting because there's been so much talk about data over the last decade, really, and digital, ag tech, all that stuff. And I think back, it wasn't that long ago in our planner, we had, I think it was 5 or 6 different screens, all bringing me different forms of data. None of it was connected, but I'm getting all this data. I had no idea what to do with it. Not a clue on what to do with it. And data without action, or insights without action, on all of our farms is really irrelevant. Doesn't mean anything. Now, insights and data that drive action and drive confidence in making the right decisions that have a positive ROI on the operations, that makes one heck of a big difference. And that's what we have to do with the data. Embrace in-season decision and making change. You'll hear me preach about that because it goes back to the Mike Tyson quote. It's what we do in the season that makes the most dramatic impact on harnessing that potential. And the thing that you really need on all of these to do that is you got to have somebody that you can trust. You got to have that trusted advisor. I think the term trusted advisor is one of the most abused terms in agriculture. But if you can truly find that trusted advisor, that person that's indispensable to your operation, because they can sort through all the data, they can sort through the digital, and help you make the right decisions in season and give you the confidence to drive that change, that person is indispensable to your operation. And when I look around the room, you've got them all around you. It's the folks in the red shirts. They understand your farm, and they care about your success. And that's what a true business partnership is at the farm. Having that person that can help you build the plan, drive the right fundamental input decisions, and harness the data is really, really important. And I'll give a couple examples of this from my own farm. So prior to coming to WinField United, I've worked in seed most of my career, so 35 years. And I've selected products. I used to do product management, select hybrids, all that good stuff. But when I was selecting hybrids, it was all about the right hybrid for the right soil type, right? The right hybrid for corn on corn versus rotational. So I go into my agronomist, my trusted advisor, and we were looking at answer plot data. Now, when we talk about big data, this is a great example of big data. Answer plots drive over 6 million data points on an annual basis, so you get a mega data view. But what's beautiful about it is, if you see here, we're able to take that data and drive it down to local. So what does that data look like in the area that I farm? And then we can drop out the top 10 hybrids by the area I'm farming in, and then further sort it by my soil types. And now all of a sudden, you can take the best 10 in the plots, and you can sort out, here's the best 2 by far. So we had that conversation, and we pull up here, we've got a DeKalb hybrid, we have an NK hybrid. And I'm like, okay, man, we're done. And that's really where the discussion just began, because the agronomist says to me, well, wait a second, what are you guys going to do from a nitrogen management standpoint? And if you look at the green bar, all of a sudden he says, because this DeKalb hybrid has a very high response to nitrogen. That means if you've got nitrogen available late, that thing is it's gonna hunt, and it's gonna hunt hard. The hybrid on the right, not so much. Does not respond to nitrogen late. Well, we're trying to do a lot of precision nitrogen application, and part of that is we go in late with nitrogen. So for my operation, it's absolutely no-brainer. So understand how your hybrid responds to nitrogen. The data is there. That's something you have to do. And then the second question they asked me was, what about fungicide? And I'm sitting here going, well, you know, we used to blanket spray our fungicide, and we had a lot of success and we had a lot of failure. You know, same township, you go a couple miles down the road, I got no response, and over here I had 20 bushel. So it's inconsistent. It's not a good investment, because you never know if you're going to get a return or not. And he started talking about the response to fungicide. And I'm going to show you some data in just a few minutes around that is incredible. But this hybrid, this DeKalb, had a high response to fungicide. So the probability of me getting a good return on that investment is very high. So I've got confidence to plant that hybrid, because now I know that I can drive later nitrogen uptake as well as fungicide. And then finally, population. We push population. Seed corn is not cheap. And I just mentioned to you guys, I'm in the seed business. But what I'm going to tell you is, if you have a hybrid that's got a moderate response to population, cut your population back and reinvest that in fungicide and nitrogen on a hybrid like that. So that's exactly what we did. But it was a really telling discussion, because all of a sudden I wasn't selecting seed the way I'd always done it. Selecting seed for the acre I was putting it on. That was part of it, but now I was really selecting seed for the way I farm, because that seed fit the system I was using. And by the way, if you're not farming that way, and you have a hybrid like this that is a superior hybrid, why not adapt to that? Why not try things that have a high probability of success? This is a great place to make changes on the farm. The next place was precision application of nitrogen on our farm. As I mentioned before, you got to have the P and K right, but the nitrogen is a huge driver of success or failure on the farm. And I can go back, I want to say, a long, long time ago, and it's been quite some time ago, but I can remember going out and, it'd be the last week of October, and we'd be hooking on anhydrous tanks, and sometimes I'd be out there in a t-shirt, right? May put a stabilizer in it, may not, and off we'd go. And we do one application, takes care of the whole year, check the box, we're done. And then the next year we'd wonder why the heck we had 100 bushel variances from one end of the field to the other. We all know that your field's not uniform all the way through, and that field's got different sized gas tanks, if you will, to hold that nitrogen. So we started to get more precise with our nitrogen application, and we started with the planter. And I'll also mention that the planter is a great place to make changes. That's probably the most important pass you make in the year. So making sure you're getting even spacing, you have even down pressure, all those things is important. And you can also use your planter for dual purpose to put on fertilizer. And what we did was we went to a 2x2x2 system. So we're applying nitrogen and ammonium sulfate 2 inches over from each side of the row and then 2 inches deep. And by the time that nitrogen is converted somewhat, that corn is getting big enough to start uptaking nitrogen. So it never wants or needs for nitrogen. It doesn't have to search for it out into the middle of the row. And then we come back as late as we can with a nitrogen application, and it's typically based on the weather. So our plan up until about 3 years ago was we always used Y drops. That way we could go in at V10, do an application, you get a rain, the nitrogen's right there at the root system. But guess what? Sometimes it didn't rain. So if the environment is a rainy one, where we're getting plenty of moisture, we'll probably use Y drop. If it's not, we change the plan and we side dress with a fast bar. It's all part of the adaptability of your plan. When you think about understanding problems and stopping them early, here's a problem we have on a field that we're going to have to react to. So we've already got a problem. That's phosphorus deficiency, and that corn is right at the stage where it's forming the number of rounds around the ear. So do we want that corn under stress right now? No. I mean, you've already knocked down the potential, or not the potential, you've knocked down your ability to get more of the potential right here. I shouldn't say you have, I did. So we can rescue this and come in, but what about this picture? We went out to this field with our agronomist, and we decided we're going to do tissue samples. And I laughingly said, we are wasting our time out here. Look at this corn. It's beautiful. There's not one sign of above ground symptomology of any nutrient deficiency. We went ahead and took the tissue samples, and man, was I wrong. I was dead wrong. Tissue samples give you the ability to see a problem before you even can, to see the problem before you can see the problem. It allows you to correct it before it nicks away at your ability to take more of that potential out. When you look at this, we were deficient on potassium, boron, and zinc. And I mentioned that ear was being formed right then. Boron's one of the most important things around ear formation. So when you are looking to really maximize your ear size, having it under pressure then is a really bad thing. So if you've never tried tissue sampling, try it. And what we found was we're almost always deficient on boron. It may be different, totally different here, I don't know. But until you try it, you'll never know what the diagnosis is. So see problems before you can see problems. And then the environment. I've said the environment I don't know how many times, and this slide's titled, "The Environment Giveth and the Environment Taketh Away." And this is an example of a 10.5-inch rain event we had over a 2-day period. And what we see is that the amount of 2+ inch rainfalls over the last 2 decades has increased dramatically. And I don't want to debate if it's climate change or if it's just cyclical weather. The fact is it's changed. we are getting lots of these heavy torrential rainfalls. So what are we going to do about it? In the past, when we'd get those, I would sit here and look at a picture like this. This is a planted cornfield, and I'd go, well, crap, you know, the tiles are running full. There's water running off the field. It's kind of warm out too. I wonder how much nitrogen I'm losing. And the easy thing to do is go, well, I can't really tell, I don't know, and do nothing. And once again, nitrogen's one of it is the most limiting factor after weather on the farm. You've got to get nitrogen right. So there's lots of things you can do. You can do nitrate samples. You can use tools like field forecasting tool. This is in the R7 suite of tools. And what it does is it takes a tissue sample, by the way, and it recalibrates what the model is doing around mineralization, denitrification, all those types of things. And then it allows you to come in and really build an ROI out. So I can look at this tool and I can put in up to 5, maybe more, different rates. I can put in my cost of application, my cost of product, and then I can pick different dates. So it can help you understand, you know, what the green is when the best dates are for your application. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than me standing out there going, well, my gut feel tells me we should do this. So on the nitrogen, since we've started doing using the planter, using the later season side dress, and some tools like this, we've been able to drastically reduce our nitrogen use efficiency. Nitrogen use efficiency is how many pounds of nitrogen it takes to produce a bushel. But we're not doing it to save money because we probably use as much nitrogen as we ever did. The University of Illinois, when I went there, used to say it's going to take you 1.1 to 1.2 pounds of N to produce a bushel of corn. Plan on it. By using this, we've been able to get down to 0.7 to 0.8 consistently on driving our nitrogen use efficiency. And when I mentioned that we're using about the same amount of nitrogen, it's because we're pushing out more bushels because of the way we're doing it. Oops. Finally, it's about plant health. So we all work in a biological factory here. I mean, we're not building cars, we're not building combines where you control the environment, you control all the variables, you take all the variability out. We live in a world of variability. And when you go outside, that sunlight, that's the fuel for the production plant, right? And it's free. So if we can extend grain fill, we can make that production factory run longer. Because at this point of the game, there's no way you can add more rounds. There's no way you can add more length. But if you can extend that grain fill by 4 or 5 days, all of a sudden you're going to have a tremendous impact on yield. It's all about plant health, keeping the factory running. Because you're going to drive bigger, deeper, denser kernels. And all of a sudden, what if the yield equation isn't it takes 90,000 kernels to make a bushel? What if it takes 80,000? Now you've had a profound impact by making a fungicide application on your yield. And there is plenty of data to give you the confidence to do that. All right, there we go. So this is out of the answer plots. I mentioned that there's 6 million data points out of the answer plots. This is all around response to fungicide. So that's defined as how do hybrids really in the absence of disease respond to a fungicide? And what you're seeing here is over 220 hybrids that we test. So pretty much all the commercial hybrids that are new or newish, we're testing to get a response to fungicide. And look at the dramatic difference between the worst and the best. This is why I was talking about, I'm driving down the road and I have such inconsistency on my fungicide applications because I had no idea what the response to score was of the hybrid I was applying it to. When you look at this, you can see this bottom line, that's your break-even line. That's where you're paying for the fungicide. This is your average. But look at these hybrids over here. If you're planting one of these hybrids, you are not getting justice out of the investment you have in that seed if you don't apply fungicide to it, because the probability of a profitable response is so high that that's a decision you almost have to make. And then the other thing is, what if these hybrids have this high response to fungicide? Can we profit more by multiple applications of fungicide? There is all kinds of new, really cool stuff coming out with fungicides. In furrow, I mean, it's really interesting. We're on the verge of being able to do some really neat stuff. So fungicide is one of the biggest drivers after nitrogen. And using tools can really help you on your fungicide applications. So this is an example of from R7, which is a WinField United tool, that shows trends of your fields. So when you see a red arrow, that means that field, the biomass health index is starting to trend down. It's not producing biomass as fast as these four that are trending up. So in essence, that's probably where you should prioritize anything that you're going to do, or at least prioritize going and looking at it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this slide. It's a really good one, but because this was before we had that tool, and you can't really see it, but there's basically a dead strip going through the field. That's where we left a strip, and we sprayed this with a ground rig. And there was a big difference in the yield. But what you also can't see is the back half of this field is basically dead. So we obviously waited too long. We made a mistake. We put convenience of fungicide application over prioritization of fungicide application. That's a big difference. If we'd applied to this field first instead of last, what would the yield difference have been? It would have been significant. I can tell you that. And you can use satellite imagery too to see things. If you walk out in this field, you can see this distinct line, right? More biomass on the top, it's darker green. Less biomass on the bottom. So you know there's an issue going on there. You can see disease pressure like this, but what is really interesting in this instance, you see how it's almost right down a line. It's about half the field. Remember the picture of the cornfield I showed that we did the tissue sample on, and it was deficient of boron, zinc, and potassium? Well, because I wasn't a believer, I did the application on half the field. Guess which half of the field I did the application on? So sometimes some of the most expensive decisions that we make are the decisions we don't make. You know, I'm going to stay with the status quo. It's comfortable. I don't want to change. I mean, it goes back to what my dad said to me. That's the way we've always done it. We can't think that way anymore. Finally, geez. I'll get good at this about the time I'm done, right? But finally, are there tools out there that can help us invest in these things where all the risk doesn't go to you? Because if you think about it, as over the years as we farm, as soon as we buy a product, the risk moves to us, right? So we're working on tools with Superior Ag around, can we use this data and can we use digital to be confident enough that we can offer a risk warranty based on APH yield? And we can. So the answer plot data gives us the ability to go out and reinsure a risk warranty of up to 105% of your trending APH. And if you follow the prescription, and it can be anything from a fungicide-only prescription to soup to nuts, starting with the corn, seed treatment, crop protection, fungicide, the whole thing. And what it enables you to do is go with these high probability inputs, and if it doesn't work, you get a high amount of the invested dollars that you put in back. So in essence, you have some skin in the game. Superior Ag and WinField United have skin in the game. We're in it together to drive that increased profitability and give you the ability to continue to invest in the crop. So you can see we're getting really positive yield results here. It's not about yield. Well, it's partially about yield, but it's okay, if I spent more money than the yield of the corn is going to cover, that's a bad decision, right? So we always have to go down to ROI on this. And you can see the ROIs overall out of 19 different locations, which were on that last slide, after all the additional input cost, we were over $60 of return on investment. And if you look at the lower yielding environment defined as less than 200 bushel, it was higher, $68. Now, we're blessed, right? We're in a 550 corn market, so it makes the impact bigger, but learn while you're in the 550 corn market, because this is the kind of stuff that will make you profitable when it's hard to be profitable when the corn market isn't 650, when it goes back to 350. It's using science and the art with your trusted advisor to drive these type of results. Finally, this is a John Romine slide. He talks about it all the time, and it's a great analogy connecting football to farming. So Aaron Rodgers doesn't go out and make a play up in the huddle and say, let's go. They carefully plan out the plays, they practice the plays, and then they execute the play from the start of the whistle, or from the snap till the whistle blows at the end of the play, right? If any of those players stop before the whistle blows, it's not going to be successful. It's exactly what we've been talking about the last 35 minutes. It starts with the plan, and then the ball is snapped on your first pass through the field. And it's what we do after that that's going to make the difference. Are we going to go till the whistle blows, or maybe even a little bit more past harvest? Or are we going to stop in mid-season? That's the challenge, is going whistle to whistle. That being said, I really appreciate the chance to come and talk about some of the things that we've done that have been successful and some of the things that really haven't. We've made a lot of mistakes, but I think that it's just the challenge of always using the things, the tools that you have at your fingertips, the advisors that you have at your fingertips to get a little bit better every year. Continuous improvement is a big thing. Get bigger by getting better.